Hi everyone, this video this week is about chemistry of nitrogen. This is unit 5A and 5B in your textbook. So let's get started. So our objectives, these are quite wordy this week. Our objectives are mostly surrounding nitrogen, fertilizer, and reaction rates and equilibrium. So to kind of narrow it down to just a list of topics instead. We're going to look at the ingredients in fertilizer. We're going to look at the nitrogen cycle. We are going to look at how reaction rates are affected by things like temperature, concentration, a catalyst. And we are even going to talk a little bit about equilibrium and Le Chatelier's principle and how that relates to something called the Haber-Bosch process. And the Haber-Bosch process you're also going to be looking into again for part C. So in terms of fertilizers, their purpose is to add nutrients to the soil so that growing plants will have what they need. A complete fertilizer contains three main ingredients, which are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and they'll also contain trace ions and filler material. The percent of each ingredient will vary by the crop's needs. So for lawn grasses, you need more nitrogen, so it's going to be a 20 to 10 to 10. So those stand for percents. I'm going to show you in a second. For fruits and veggies, you're going to need more phosphorus, so it's going to be 10, 30, 10, over what would be considered a balanced fertilizer, which is 10, 10, and 10. And these nutrients would be present as ions, cations and anions. So if you take a look to the nutrition ingredients label to the right, kind of like the nutrition label for the fertilizer, you can see at the top, there's that 20, 10, 20. That's the blend, if you want, or the percent of each ingredient that is for this general purpose fertilizer. So where that comes from is these three numbers. The first 20 is from the nitrogen, the 10 is from the phosphorus, which comes from phosphate, and the third one is 20% for the potassium, which comes from potassium oxide. And that's just where those numbers come from. And then you can, just like any mixture, you can vary how much of each component you have, and it can serve a different purpose. So fertilizers have those three main ingredients. And like we said before, the different blends will kind of cater to different crops. So potassium comes with or promotes cell wall thickening. It protects the plants against cold temperatures, pests, and disease. It will also regulate water use and nutrient movement in cells, and it will activate plant enzymes involved in processes such as photosynthesis and respiration. Phosphorus, over here to the left, will promote the production of blooms, flowers, seeds, and root development. It's also a component in DNA, RNA, and ATP. So you might recognize those terms from biology last year. And then last, nitrogen. Nitrogen promotes new tree growth. It's a component of proteins, DNA, RNA, ATP, and chlorophyll. Again, lots of biology terms here because we're looking at the study of a plant at this point. So we mentioned the nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen cycle is, in general, that cycle of the nitrogen atoms as it moves through the different components or the different areas in our biosphere, really, because it's not just in the atmosphere, it's also in the earth. So it starts with nitrogen fixing bacteria. So we're here. So they live in legume roots, nodules, or in soil. They will convert nitrogen gas to ammonia gas, which it shows here, or even ammonium ions. And lightning will convert nitrogen in the atmosphere to a nitrogen oxide. From there, there's various soil bacteria that will nitrify. So that's this one here. And that's going to oxidize that NH3 or that ammonia, and in some cases the ammonium ions, to nitrite ions, which is here, and in some cases nitrate ions, which are here. Both are important for the soil. The plants take in nitrate ions from the soil. So here you can see those nitrate ions going into the roots of the plants, and they're going to use the nitrogen atoms to make proteins and other nitrogen-containing compounds. So that would live in the plant. Then the nitrogen passes along the food chain. So something will eat that plant. That plant gets consumed by an animal, then that animal gets consumed by another animal, and it continues that way, and that's the food chain. When those plants and animals die, they will actually, the bacteria and fungi will take up and use the nitrogen from those plant and animal proteins and other nitrogen containing molecules. And those remaining nitrogen atoms will be released as either ammonium ions or ammonia gas. So that's that ammonification right here, and that's going to go back into the soil. It's going to create more nitrite, which then could produce some nitrate ions and then keep on going. This denitrification bacteria, don't mind my unicorn, the denitrification bacteria will convert some ammonia, some nitrite, and some nitrate ions to nitrogen gas. And that's going to return back to the atmosphere. And then it would cycle back through again. So there's kind of a couple little pathways happening. It's not just a perfect circle, but that gives you an idea of how nitrogen passes through these different forms. So I mentioned Haber-Bosch, and you're going to look into this more in part C, but this is the two scientists. We have Fritz Haber and Carl Bosch. They're pictured here to the right. They created a less expensive method to produce ammonia, so compared to what was current at the time. And they used just hydrogen gas and nitrogen gas, and they were able to produce ammonia gas, like in this reaction here below. This converts nitrogen gas molecules into a more useful ammonia molecule, and it's when you're in a molecule, when the nitrogen atoms are in a molecule, it's fixed nitrogen, meaning it's set. You're not going to gain or lose it to other processes as easily. And then that fixed nitrogen can be readily converted into a nitrogen containing compound. So that ammonia can then go into a nitrogen containing compound. 1 second, Colin. Oh, it's right here. No, it's right there. So then we have equilibrium. So did you notice that double arrow in that reaction? That shows that this is a reversible reaction. So this double arrow here means that as nitrogen and hydrogen are forming ammonia, ammonia is also decomposing back into nitrogen and hydrogen. And this picture here shows it on this reaction. The first image shows it on molecular level. The second one shows it on a less detailed molecular level. So you can kind of see the two samples. You can see the hydrogen and nitrogen gas, those blue and red dots that are kind of living together on the left, and the ammonia dots are the ammonia molecules that are living together on the right. Next up, we have kinetics. And kinetics is the study of reaction rates, or how fast the chemical reaction can occur. So in order for a chemical reaction to occur, atoms must collide. They must have enough energy to form a bond, and they must have proper orientation. They must be arranged properly in space. So if they bounce together like this, it might not work. But if they come together kind of twisted instead and they can bond, then it would work. So, you know, each reaction would have a different proper orientation, but proper orientation is important. So you can see to this image to the right here, that if reactants are moving too slowly, the molecules will just bounce off of each other and there's no reaction. And if the reactions aren't facing the right way, the molecules will still bounce off each other and there's no reaction. But the last one, if both things are just right, a chemical reaction will occur. Anytime that you're trying to change the rate of reaction, you're going to change the number of collisions. So if you can increase those number of collisions, then you're going to have more collisions, so more of them are likely to be proper or be successful. And so more collisions means a faster reaction. Go get food then. If you increase concentration, there's more particles, there's more collisions, and it'll be a faster rate. If you increase the temperature, the molecules will move faster and there'll be more collisions, so it'll be faster rate. If you increase the surface area, if there's more surface for collisions, there's going to be more collisions, it's going to be a faster rate. If you increase pressure, the particles under more pressure will collide more often. That's one of the reasons why that pressure does change. And then that'll be a faster rate. And then last is catalysts. Catalyst is specifically designed to increase the rate of reaction. And it works because it lowers the activation energy. You might remember that term from before. And when there's less energy required for the reaction to occur, it can happen at a faster rate. The key with the Haber-Bosch process was that the ammonia decomposes back into nitrogen and hydrogen gas at high temperatures. But with a catalyst, we can still have that faster rate, but we can have that faster rate at a slightly lower temperature, which will slow the rate of decomposition. For this process, iron is commonly used. So when you have something at equilibrium, you have those reversible reactions that we talked about before. And when equilibrium is reached, then you would have constant concentrations, And that forward reaction and that reverse reaction would appear to be happening at equal rates, or they'll be happening at equal rates. So the whole reaction kind of appears to stop because it's in balance. What's being produced is being decomposed at the exact same rate. So you can see in this diagram here that the first as it increases, the first picture shows that you have all red molecules. In the second, you see that some of the red have turned into blue. So some of those reactions had turned into products. And the third one, you have less red and more blue. So the reaction is continuing. But in the third and the fourth one, there's equal number of red and equal number of blue molecules, representing a constant concentration. And that is when equilibrium has been reached. So in this diagram, equilibrium was reached at T3, at time 3. Le Chatelier's principle says that the predicted shift in equilibrium's position is always going to counteract whatever stress is on the system. So the system will adjust to oppose the stress placed. So you can see this tightrope walker here. Say a big wind blew. He's going to teeter for a minute until he regains his balance, but he's going to oppose the wind until he can get back to his equilibrium, get back in balance. That's what happens here. So in the Haber-Bosch process, if you add reactants, you're going to shift those reactants. You're going to shift to use the reactants to oppose the stress, which will ultimately create more ammonia. So if you add in more of these reactants, the reaction wants to oppose it, it's going to use them, and then you're going to end up creating more ammonia. If you remove product, then to oppose that, you'd have to create more product, which is creating more ammonia. If you increase pressure, it's going to go to the side that has fewer molecules. So here we have 1 molecule and 3 molecules, so that's 4, and on this side we have 2. So the side that has fewer molecules is the product side. So if you increase pressure, it's going to go to the side with fewer molecules and ultimately create more product, more ammonia. And if we lower the temperature, this reaction is going to shift to produce more heat. Heat is on the right-hand side here, on the product side. So to oppose that stress, it's going to create more heat, it's going to create more ammonia. But with all of these situations, all of these parameters in place, a delicate balance is needed. So all of these conditions have to be kind of found into that perfect spot, plus a catalyst is used as well. And you're going to learn a lot more about this in Part C. Nitrogen is used for other things as well. About 80% of ammonia is produced in order to use in fertilizer, but nitrogen is also used in explosives like warfare and even explosives like in airbags. So you have TNT, you've got nitroglycerin, but you also have lead azide, which is what's in airbags. And so let's review. Fertilizers tend to help plant growth, but they impact the natural nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen cycle is that natural process where the nitrogen atoms move through nature. The rates of reaction are affected by the system and the conditions like temperature, pressure, concentration, volume, catalysts, so the size of the container even. And equilibrium reaction rates are equal and opposite, but you have constant concentrations. So I hope this helped, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Have a great week, everyone.